I'm sitting in an office pre-pandemic and I'm being interviewed. There's a panel of 5 people sitting staring at me and it's complete silence in the room. And that's because it's me. I have to answer the question, but I do not know the answer. I can't think of a thing to say. I have to say something because it's my question. I go into the depths of my brain and it literally seems empty. And the more I think about it, the emptier my brain seems, if that's even possible. And it's horrible. Just thinking about how much of an idiot I look, how I've completely stuffed up the interview. I'm not going to be able to pull this back. I think my face is going red and I'm sure they can see that I'm panicking. I think I'm sweating. And then I start to feel really emotional and I'm thinking, just don't cry, Tessa. Don't cry in an interview. It's going to be completely horrible. It's not just me, right? You've been there too. Or if you haven't, then it's likely that it will happen to you at some point. After this experience, I knew that I had to have a plan. It could happen again, and when I'm stumped, I need to have a strategy. Here's the strategies I use when I just don't know the answer and I start to panic in an interview. It's not ideal. I don't think we can pretend that not knowing an answer at interview can suddenly be turned around and you're going to be awesome. We know this isn't the ideal thing that will happen, but it does happen. In a case of emergency, when the worst happens, when you can't think of the answer, it's really important to have some strategies so that you can help pull it back so that it isn't a thing that collapses your whole interview and ruins your chances. Project calm. They don't know how you're feeling inside. When I was panicking in that interview, I don't know if I actually looked like I was going red. I just felt like I was. They only know what you project to them. And commonly when this happens in speaking situations or interview situations, you feel like it's worse than the audience really appreciates. So when it happens, remember that they can't see inside your brain or your heart, and they only see what you choose to show them. It's important to project calm. Also, you can turn it around, and actually it is a strength to be put under a stressful situation and then be able to come up with something to say. They will want to see you under pressure. That may be why they've asked you a difficult question, or maybe it's a question that you should have known the answer to. Show that you can have something that you're not sure about initially, but be able to come up with an answer that sounds sensible. That is a great strength. So you can use this to an advantage. Not giving an answer, it's a shame. You may come up with something, and we'll talk about ways that you can help to come up with a thought that you could share, or maybe you can't, and maybe you're not going to be able to answer that question. Not answering the question in an interview, it's a shame. There's no other way to say it, it's a shame. But what is worse is totally losing your composure in an interview. Getting very flustered, crying, running out, making a fool of yourself, showing that you are losing your composure completely. That's much worse than just not answering a question. So even if this happens to you and you're feeling bad about it, don't make it worse. Just keep composure and project calm. And learn to love silence. This is something I've had a huge problem with, not just at interviews, but in my teaching and presentations, is that I have been scared of silence and I've always tried to fill it. And I've had to work really hard over the last 6 months or so to change that. Because actually a pause can be a good thing. For the people listening to the pause, it's likely that it's not as long as it seems to you. And for you, if you can use that pause to breathe, to get your thoughts back on track, to come up with the right or focused idea, then that is a great use of silence. You don't need to fill the silence with ums. I use a lot of M's, and I tend to use a really long and as a connective word. You don't need to do that. You also don't need to fill it with nonsense or saying something silly. It's okay just to have a pause while you think about what you're going to do and how to answer the question. It may be you're the sort of person who would find it beneficial to think out loud, and it's okay to talk. It's okay to say, well, I'm trying to think how to answer this question. You've asked about X, so probably you're looking for an example of a situation where this has happened. I'm just trying to think of a good example. Now, if that's going to help you come up with something while you're talking, that's fine as well. If you're just killing time to more nothingness, you're better off just trying to use the silence and help use that wisely to gather your thoughts. And turn that panic into something interesting. I just completed a really good speaking course, which is called Ultra Speaking. In Ultra Speaking, they use this concept of a snow globe, that's what's going on inside your brain. If you can imagine the snow globe's been really shaken, and when you're panicking, you've got all these thoughts like the snow running through your brain, and you're trying to pick out a thought to share, but you simply can't. And what you need to do is to let that snow globe settle. Let the ideas settle in your brain. And that's what the beauty of a pause and a breath can do. Just to allow the ideas to settle. What you're trying to do there is to use that time to focus on an idea that resonates with you, something that you feel confident to talk about, something that is related, that is useful to answer the question. So taking that breath, allowing that snow globe to settle, can actually allow you to pick a focused thought and help you answer the question. If you can, you could redirect the answer to something that is relevant to the question, that is related even if it doesn't directly answer, and that helps put you in a good light. Again, it's not going to be the ideal. The ideal is that you answer the question that they asked in the way that they want the answer. But if you can come up with something that's related that maybe gets you some points, then that's a good example to use too. Sometimes you may just need to be honest. If you can't answer the question and you've tried these strategies, then honesty may be the best way forward, and it's definitely worse than losing your composure. So you might want to say, I'm sorry, I can't think of how to answer that question now. Could we move on to the next question? That's all right. It's not what you want in an interview. You're not going to get the points for that. There's no way of dressing it up, but it's a way to then move on and allow yourself to refocus and get on with the rest of the interview. If you do think of an answer later, if you didn't answer the question at all, or maybe you didn't answer it well, and you think of an answer later, it is okay to add in some thoughts at the end when they ask you if there's any questions. I don't think it's unreasonable to say, look, when I answered the question about whatever, I wasn't able to come up with an answer, or I don't think I really did the answer justice, and there's a few other things I'd like to share. Now, whether they'll include that in your scoring of the question, that'll be up to the panel. I think at worst, it's going to show that you've been able to refocus, you've been able to learn from what happened, gather some thoughts, and present yourself in a positive light because of it. And at best, you will get some points for answering that question. So if you really have thought of something useful to say, you can add it in at the end. We all wish we knew the answer to every question we got asked at interview, and that's why we prepare so that we know as much, we've anticipated the questions. But it could happen to you, and it's happened to me, where I'm just drawing a blank. And if that happens, that's why we need these strategies. That's why we need to have a plan. Okay, you're not the first person who has not known an answer to an interview question, and you can use these strategies to try and get back on track, or to move on. We also have to make sure that if it happens that we don't answer the question and we move on, or it's a terrible answer, or we think it's a disaster, that we can still participate fully in the rest of the interview. Because if you just let that thought dominate your mind for the rest of the interview, you're not going to be able to perform well in answering the other questions. So the episode is closed, you've done it, you made not your best answer, you've moved on, you're not the first person for it to happen to. You need to get back on track and focus on the other questions. It's not all over because of one question. You don't know how the other candidates have performed. You don't know how they're going to score you for what you did say. So move on and forget about it. Don't dwell on it for the whole interview. We all know that ideally we would know the answer to every question we get asked at interview. That's why we prepare. That's why we try to anticipate the questions. That's why we practice, is because we want to be able to answer every question. But truthfully, it could happen to you. It's happened to me. We need to have a plan B. We need to have strategies for what happens if I don't know the answer, what happens if my mind goes blank, what happens if I panic. If you follow these strategies, you might be able to pull it back completely, or at least you'll have a plan to make the best out of a really challenging situation.